I'd like to just thank everyone so much for joining us and give you a little bit of background if you're joining us for the first time, right? So almost 2 years ago to this date, I was busy putting on dinners for product leaders around London and doing a lot of kind of product events. And at the same time, Henry was starting Prod MBA, which has now attracted over 200 product people over a wide number of industries. And Henry and I teamed up last year. And so if you fast forward over those last 2 years since we were doing various things, as so many people have asked us to create more virtual events where Henry and I address specific issues in product, and also to make it more interactive so you can bring your own questions, we can go through those. And that's what today is about. And you know, for those of you coming for the first time, we do this weekly, and we're looking forward to doing a lot more and seeing a lot more of you on in the future. So today we're going to be talking a lot about scaling product teams. And during the week, Henry and I kind of reach on LinkedIn and say, hey, bring your questions. And quite a few of you have already done that, which is absolutely brilliant. So we're going to be talking about scaling product teams this week. So in each of these events, Henry and I will take a topic, we talk about it, and then we open up the floors to you to either talk about what we just spoke about, or if you couldn't care less, then we can talk about something else that you're interested in, which is absolutely cool too. So we're going to discuss specific topics for about 15 minutes, and then we're just going to open this up to questions. So last time from me, it's really great to have you here. Henry, over to you, mate.
Awesome. Yes, we're going to do these as a weekly session. Actually, I lie, I'm away next week, but after that, we'll do it as a weekly session. Ross will be here next week. We're going to aim for 30 minutes. You know, if it goes over, then that's fine. You know, if questions keep coming, we'll make sure we will answer as many as possible. But yeah, let's kick off this week. Obviously we're talking about scaling product teams broadly. I think one topic that Ross and I discussed, I know Ross has come up in a lot of conversations you've had that I'd like to learn more about as well, is people talk about sort of raising the bar with their teams, right? Every product leader wants product people who are performing better in their organization. So I suppose first question from my side is, when you talk about raising the bar, it's like, well, like, what is the bar and where is it? So, we'll come on to something called the Product Scorecard that you've developed, but what do you mean by measuring when you talk about product teams? Like, how do you measure product teams?
I love this question. Thanks, dude. That's teeing me up great. So what I mean by that is over the years, I've been engaged with it, and now together we've been engaged with loads and loads of product leaders who, let's just take the example we gave of the last 2 years. So they may go, hey, let's think of something specifically that we may have heard of recently, like, I've just hired 10 new product managers because we know we need them. But hey, I'm a CPO, I'm the product leader, or head of product, whatever I'm busy with. And I don't know whether the product team is actually great, whether they're scaling that way, how we measure them. Also, I've been in large organizations where, like last week, and this is a personal kind of bugbear of mine, but last week we were project managers, now we're product managers, or even worse, companies that think they're doing product and they're not really sure. Yeah. And my big personal kind of pet hate there is, if you aren't measuring things well and you're taking a proper audit of where you are, you're just going to be defaulting to delivery. And what I mean by that is, if we think about managing up, say, to your senior leadership team, they will think, okay, cool, we used to do project management, or we do product management, that's cool. How are we delivering? What's the roadmap? What are we doing there? A lot of them are not aware, because they're not practitioners like us, all the things that go into it. It could be, how do we improve our communication internally or externally? How closely are we working with go-to-market? If it's an external facing tool, if it's an internal facing tool, are we getting feedback from our stakeholders? Are they giving us any feedback? Are we getting forms, for example, regularly to say, hey, this is going really well? Do an internal NPS, if you will. Those are some of the things. And there are some companies that do this. Most of the companies I've worked with and that I'm seeing recently are running ahead like headless chickens, because they kind of...
Yes, sorry to jump in on that. Also, feel free, if anyone listening, feel free to start posting questions. We'll come on to it in sort of 5-10 minutes. So sorry to recap that. So essentially, like, we want a way to measure product teams that goes beyond, and I suppose that's why a lot of leaders default to Scrum, right? It's like, okay, if we can measure velocity, that just gives us something to sort of benchmark. And I'm sure people aren't stupid, right? They're aware that it's not just about delivering well, some people delivering, as many features as possible, but it's like, okay, well, it's the only way that we have to benchmark. So let's just do that. So you're saying actually we want to find a holistic way to measure the success of product teams based on obviously also the kind of things that are important at any one time.
Yeah, 100% saying it. Just to put in context, I once launched an incredibly successful product, which I talk about relatively often. And then I was, promoted to my level of incompetence, as they say, where I was the chief product officer of this $1 billion turnover product, but essentially I had 32 people to manage directly and indirectly. And the one thing that I'd like everybody to hear is I didn't have any Scrum Masters. I didn't have anybody telling me which way to manage my sprints in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, or even manage sprints. But that was because I was able to measure where we were, communicate that very effectively up, and communicate it down. Where were we with all the teams, right? Now, in order to do that, you got to have great teams that are super engaged. And the problem with us in product is a lot of the time we don't choose our teams, we just inherit them. Yeah. But there are ways that we can manage that. So that's exactly what I'm saying. And I think a lot of the times we will either default to or take sometimes a lead from, or let's put it in a negative way, get bullied by, and I'm not saying we do, but I'm just trying to be dramatic here, get bullied by some agile coaches who are telling us we're not doing it right. And what I want to tell you is, if you take ownership of measuring things and auditing and do them properly, you shouldn't care at all, and I don't, what agile people are telling me in the organization. Obviously, it depends on the size of the organization, and yeah, sometimes you need to listen because of the political structures. But a lot of the time, if you're smart enough, and some of the questions, I'm just going to preempt a question. A lot of people will tell me, well, we can't do it in our organization. And the kind of the combative question I usually answer with is, well, like, why not? Why can't you? And it's like, well, I'll get fired. And it's like, great, try, get fired. Worst case, you leave, you get another role. And with the product market being where it is.
Yeah, right now, it's going to say, it's like hotcakes, easy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. However, yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, I suppose it really comes back to that, right? Why do you hire an agile coach? Because you want your product teams to perform better. Issue is that they're looking through a very singular lens of, well, what always tends towards execution, right? Rather than focus on strategy or discovery or, as you said, communication.
Yeah.
I suppose
I had someone send me through a roadmap to have a look at and say, what do I think? And I was like, that's not a roadmap, that's a wish list. That's like, you're telling me exactly what you're going to be doing in October. And you're telling me, high growth company and everything's changing, and you know exactly what's happening in that, like the second sprint of October.
Yeah.
Nuts, right?
Yeah, you can't predict the future. Absolutely. So talk to me about the product scorecard. You did this big talk at whatever it was it Product Tech? When the product, looking big dog on the stage, thousands of people, about the product scorecard. Like, how did you develop? So essentially, product scorecard is this, the way to measure, right? That you found that works really well in terms of measuring product teams on a leadership level. Whereas, my focus is always on the product manager themselves and their skill, their competencies. Like, where did that come from? Was that just through experience, through this, working out what works in terms of communicating with stakeholders?
It came through, like most things, or at least most things in my life, through huge amounts of frustration and pain. Of trying to go to a CEO and saying we're doing this or we're doing that, or a COO, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but we've got to have the app in the App Store by June because we've got a contract with Comcast, and the contract says it's in June, so kind of don't care. So then the answer goes, okay, so to be clear, the contract doesn't say what Comcast have got to have. It just says an app in the App Store, right? And then it came from that, and it came from a lot of working with sales teams, go-to-market teams, comms teams, and trying to get much, much closer to them. And then I think, as product managers, we love frameworks, right?
Yeah.
And we should love frameworks. But again,
buzzwords as well.
Yeah, as I think Gregory Bateson said, is the map is not the territory, and sometimes we get hung up on the fact that we think our framework is the reality. It's just the model, and I was trying to create a model that would help me as at the time a senior product manager. I wasn't yet at the CPO level. I was just trying to go like, firstly, what the hell do I need to do to be good? No one was telling me that. So you got all the product stuff, and you need to read Marty Kagan's books, and now you read a Teresa Torres book. But what no one ever tells you is, here's all the things, audit the damn stuff. And then moving forward a couple of years, I got a really interesting contract for a company that just wanted a product coach. I was very happy working full-time where I was. And I was like, wow, this coaching contract sounds cool. And then when I got there, just like anything else, you realize, oh, hang on a second, okay, this is everything's screwed up. And I remember absolutely, and we just hired this product lead, and the person who hired came to me and said, well, Ross, like, how do I manage her? I'm her manager, and I don't know anything about product. So I was like, okay, so I dusted off the scorecard that I created for myself, and I was like, okay, let's give it to her as a manager, so she can actually start managing her people. And she was not a product manager. And firstly, it was obviously absolutely stupid and unfair to say, okay, you've never even been on one of these 3 days, learn the jargon product courses, and now you've got to manage a team of product owners or product managers at the time. And that's where a lot of it came from.
So that's like, you're arming somebody that, I think it's also a really important point, is that, even if you've got 20 years in product, there are areas you're just not going to have expertise in, like it might be the domain, or you haven't done product discovery for 10 years, and the frameworks and approaches might change. So talk us through where we want to make time for questions as well. What are the sort of key steps of the product scorecard?
Yeah, I guess step one is really doing an audit. It's really auditing all the things you need to do, and this is different for all companies. What isn't different, or what's the same at all of them, is you need to be able to go back to your SLT, your senior leadership team, your steer code, depending where you are in the organization, even if you're junior, and be able to say, hey, I audited all these things, and I self-scored these things. Feedback. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let's talk about these things. The challenge I see there, though, sometimes is a lot of people in product will wait for permission for their managers to kind of go, hey, I'm thinking of doing the scorecard thing, and I want to do this. And sometimes your managers is busy and just goes, haven't got time for it, talk to me in a month. In which case they've just paused you. Or they've just said, oh, it sounds great, but let me get involved, in which case they've just messed it up. So you just need to audit it. We've got some templates in our courses that we share.
Send that through actually to anybody's interested. So it's essentially it's a way of just starting the conversation right around, okay, look, here are the areas that we value, and here's how we rate ourselves from discovery, communication, execution, also important, for example. Okay, nice. We'll share a template as well with anyone that wants to sort of have a further look at that, and obviously come next week with some follow-up questions.
So I've always been happy to share it. The challenge I've always seen in sharing it is sharing it without the, let's say, the coaching or the accountability and the understanding behind it. Means I've shared it with loads of people who love it, they get super excited, and then it kind of falls flat because I don't quite have it.
Oh, it's cool, then never apply it.
Yeah, that's cool. Always happy to share it.
No, sorry, I was saying, I completely agree. Same thing with, big learning from product MBAs. You have to push people to actually go and apply it, right? Otherwise, and also need that guidance and mentorship.
And that's why I think product MBA is, well, at least in my opinion, it's been one of the best product learnings that are absolutely out there in the market, because you've got that interactive, hold your feet to the fire. You're going to build this thing. It's going to be hard, but we're going to achieve something.
Well, it's like, how do you simulate an environment that's as close to real life as possible, right? Yeah. Nice.
Such a fire at the same time, I think.
Nice. Let's cover any questions we've got. So feel free, if you're listening in, to post questions. It can be about the product scorecard. It can be anything related to product leadership. We had a few from Marina coming through before, but do feel free to post on here. 1 second. Right, so Ross, got a couple of questions to throw your way, and feel free to select whichever you're interested in. Let me post these for everybody else.
Go for it, mate.
You want to hit one of those first two?
Yeah, these are great. So these are from Marina, right?
Yeah, they are.
Awesome. Marina, thanks so much for sending these things through. Difference between VP and CPO role. Well, it depends on the size of the company and how your product department is set up. So I've had some roles where I've been CPO, reported into CEO. I've had some roles where I've been VP of product, reported into the CEO. So the answer really is it depends on the, Matt, I'll get to that question in a sec, dude. The question between VP, it really depends on the complexity that the company has set it up. Sometimes the CPO will just be on the senior leadership team and the exec team, but I've been a VP and been on the exec team and made those decisions as well. So it depends how many layers of management the company wants to instill and install.
I suppose to back that up, there's a in terms of if you look at competencies, if you take Ravi Mehta's sort of 4 competencies model, one we use in Product I think it's the best one out there. You're looking at product strategy, leadership and influence, execution, and customer insight. Your shift, the more senior you get, ultimately you're shifting towards strategy and influence and away from execution. There's a general trend towards that. So I think, the main thing is when we're looking at the kind of skills you should be developing around leadership and influence, it's things like storytelling, taking complex topics and simplifying them. I think is something that's really undervalued. You as your personal brand as well. So how do you influence people effectively and get people to buy into different stories?
Sorry to interrupt you, Henry. I think that's one thing that that a lot of us in product underestimate, though, that personal brand.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but sorry to just stay on that question. So I think there's it's that general trend. So how are you always developing your strategic skills and your leadership and influence skills? And if you aren't developing them, then go and put work in as Marina's doing on our current cohort. And I suppose that touches upon the second question, right? What are the key skills that a VP needs to flex into? Yeah. Anything you'd add to that? I think because it's easy to give these sort of generic answers like just get better at strategy and influence. But are there any specific tactics or perhaps surprising, less talked about areas that you think are important?
Yeah, learn to say no a lot more.
Yeah.
I think the difference between someone who's a product leader and maybe an individual contributor or senior PM is, and you can make the argument that maybe a senior PM feels like they don't have the ability to say no or they'll get fired or something. I don't buy into that, by the way, but and I have noticed there are a couple of South Africans on this call, so I'm just going to blame myself.
Yeah, you guys definitely better at saying no. Yeah.
But I really think that is the difference, man. I've worked at organizations where like a CEO will ask for something, and most people think because someone asked for something, you have to do it. Whereas my approach is, they may not be clear in understanding what it is they asked for. And a lot of the time, the other skill you need to have, or that I wasn't quite sure that I needed to develop, but turned out I really did, is you need to be really clear and concise in your communication. I know on these events and the podcasts and stuff, we kind of shoot from the hip a little bit, but sometimes you got to be really careful, because you may have an idea like, hey, love pink unicorns, they're absolutely amazing. You're just thinking, at least in my case, I was thinking about my daughter's birthday party or something. And people are like, okay, CPO pink, it's got to be unicorns. That's exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And it's a throwaway comment. And I used to make these kind of throwaway comments and then come back and people, but you said you liked that. And I was like, I did say I liked it, but I didn't mean it in this context. And I think the other thing that you need to be able to do, and this one is going to be tough, is if there are children around, I'm going to swear, so just kind of maybe mute you, block their ears or something. But a lot of the time people say, hey, listen, we're in a safe space. And it's absolute and utter bullshit.
It's like high pressure.
Okay. Yeah. I don't understand what a safe space is. Okay. In other words, if I need to tell you it's a safe space, it's not a safe space. Okay. So what I need to do as a head of product or CPO or VP, whatever the role is, let people know, and by not telling them, but by the actions of knowing you can fuck up and it's okay, right? We're not going to fire you for fucking this up, but we are going to fire you maybe for trying or not trying or not pushing things. And that's a tough one. And I remember having a conversation with the CEO once, and he was like, we're not failing enough, all these kind of things. And I was like, dude, you got to think about what you're saying here. Because if I go back to my team and say, cool, they can fail more, it's like, but at what level is it really failing? Is it really learning? I've worked with people that the other thing I used to say is, well, hang on, you hired me to be competent, not incompetent. So where's the difference between failing because you're incompetent and failing because you're trying and you're competent, but you just don't know the answers yet? And the real answer there is in communication, your intent super, super clearly. And as we were discussing the other day, Henry, just like do it 3 times. Tell people what you're going to say it, and then just tell them what you said. And as people have been through our courses or people who know us, it's get that feedback. If you're going to communicate something, ask people what they thought you communicated. If this was our job, I would be at the end of this call, I would be sending all 13 people now still on the call, I'd be sending them a form going, hey, what did we communicate? What did you like most about it? What could we improve? Right. And you've got to do that. And as a CPO, you also got to have that humility to ask, hey, did you understand that? Tell me what you thought about that. Make sure that. But the other thing though, and I'll just finish on this point, is you got to spend so much of your time managing up. You've got to be managing your CEO, your CFO, your COO, because you're going to need their ground cover when you want something. You've got to be educating them on what product is. You've got to be able to do that. And you've got to be able to say no to things and go like, that doesn't work. And, if leadership was just saying yes to the things we liked, it wouldn't be leadership, it'd just be called friendship, right? We'd all just get on with it. But it's that sometimes just saying no to hard things, even though it's unpopular. And it sounds easy to do. I find it incredibly hard.
One of the big things we developed is the Miro board we use, just distilling down product discovery into vision into strategy. And then when you have that clarity of strategy, which is basically a statement of like, we help this person achieve this desired outcome by insert unique way we do that. When you have that clarity, and you can do a lot of workshops around that, but just visually, one very clear statement of this is what we do and we don't do these other things, then it saves a lot of, we call it a big domino, right? It knocks everything else into place. It saves the one decision which saves 1,000 decisions, because you can always come back to it and be like, I'm saying no because we agreed that this is what we focus on and not this stuff over here. And the more public that is, the harder it is for someone to sort of push against it, essentially. But yeah, why don't we pick up another question?
Matt asked about scorecard being, yeah. Do you want to go for it?
No, go for it. So I'm just featuring it.
Oh, cool. Great. Hey, Marina, thanks for that feedback. Appreciate that. Matt, happy to share that with you, mate. Absolutely no problem. It's something we do in our training where Henry and I give coaching specifically around it, because my personal view is I could share it with 1,000 people and maybe 2 of them will actually implement it. So I don't mind sharing it. Happy to share the video where I'll give you a little bit more background there as well.
Maybe a question on, sorry, to sort of give clarity on it. Who do you recommend uses this framework?
Senior PMs and up. Okay.
But what specifically, what's the sort of need for them?
It depends. It depends on the context they're looking at it through. So if they're looking at it through the context of career advancement, okay, it's going to massively do that for you as well. If you're looking at through the lens of being a leader, then that's another way to do it. I just want to pick up what David is saying here. The CEO relationship is key and founder-led because you can in-name only, or you can be CPO where the C is. All this means, that's exactly what I was saying, Dave. Like you could be a CPO, VP, you could be a head of product, you could be lead product, and essentially you're running it like a CPO. As far as your point about being focused on short-term targets, all CEOs are going to be focused on short-term targets. and that's tactical, and they're going to be focused on strategic. If you didn't say only focus, but if seem to be only focused on that, and the job interview process for these roles is fairly lengthy. I mean, I've had conversations. I'll just have like these kind of coffee chats about a CPO role, and I'll just talk and see if I like the person and vice versa. And only then will I start actually getting into, okay, look, what is the actual job to be done? Let's see that out.
It's a good tactic actually to get, assess the person for the product. Although it's very easy we're very good at lying to ourselves, right? Or, we'll get excited about our vision for that product and ignore the realities of what the culture might be like, or our boss, these kind of situations.
Yeah. And look, in founder-led businesses, I mean, you can be in name only. It depends on the size of the business, and it depends on the founder. I mean, I've worked in founder-led businesses where the business is like 400 people. So the founder's still a founder, still the CEO, but maybe if they're 3 people, maybe they don't let go. Okay, key differences. This is from Matt. Loving these questions, guys. What are some key differences in how PM, senior PM, product director, VP should be communicating up and down the org? I don't think
quite a big question.
Sorry?
Seems like quite a big question.
It's an awesome question, but I guess it depends on the company, right? So in some companies, and it's not even the size of the company, it's the politics and the culture of the company. It's going to be, in some companies, they're not going to want you as just a PM to be presenting to the senior. No, it's a great question, dude. Don't apologize, man. It is loaded, but it's awesome. Because it gets us to talk about the cultural differences, and a lot of the time we just kind of gloss over these things. And when it's like, sometimes I think, okay, you're a PM, you don't present a steerco because clearly you're too junior, you're not important enough, which I think is total crap, because you're the person at the table. And the analogy I always like to give, and maybe it's, there was this movie Zero Dark 30 about the harmful invasion. They had all the heads of like CIA, FBI, I don't know, military, whatever, people all around the table. And then they had the actual subject matter expert. I can't remember her name, but, played by Jessica Chastain. And everybody was like, well, how convinced are you? And they were like 50-50, 40-30, 70-30. And then how do you get to her? How convinced you? She was 100%. And then, well, you can't be. She was, okay, I'll take it down to 99%. So you can put in a little bit of wiggle room. The point is, she was the contributor that actually knew the answer. So there's no point in asking me. What I like to do is, hey, this is my view, but I've got 15 other people, whatever, to manage. I'd love to have Jessica in to come and talk about her view. Let's hear it directly from her. But again, that's going to depend on the culture and the leaders and how how narcissistic or insane they are about keeping power to themselves and not sharing it. I just don't have that view, but a lot of companies do. So
I think that there's a common. Sorry, finish your point now.
Last thing on that point, Matt, is how you should be. The differences are less important. The commonality, I think, is the most important. And you should be communicating up and down the org all the time, as high as you can go and as low as you can go, and as often as you can.
But I think also there's, following up on one of our earlier points about communication in any situation is about clarity. And I always try to think that there's something called the pyramid principle. I think the book is one of these blue ones, which is, it's kind of book that should just be an article, but it's basically how do we structure our points effectively. So just always think, what is in one sentence the core of what we're trying to communicate? How do we then break it down into separate, 2 or 3 key points, and then break down those points? I think it's always thinking of it in terms of an executive summary, whether it's up or down, and particularly remembering that, like, a lot of people we deal with are not product people or are not super experienced with product. So when we talk about, product discovery, it's like, okay, well, why are we doing it? What are the key learnings? If we are communicating a product strategy, people sort of think strategy is the same as a to-do list. It's not, but again, every single time we mention it, remember that they probably forgot or weren't listening, or worry about their kid's birthday party, as Ross said. So just reinforcing very clearly, what's the thing we're doing, why are we doing it, and how did we do it, or what were the key results, in as simple a way as possible, whoever you're talking to. is you can't really go wrong with that.
100%. I know we're running a bit long, but if people got more questions, I'm happy to stay on.
Yeah, if we got any more, otherwise we can wrap up. We got no more questions. What have we got here? Matt, nice comment. Interesting flip of the coin from your perspective, Ross, about commonalities in communication. Thanks, Henry and Ross, for hosting this today. We'll have to look for recording and have to jump off.
Okay,
I've got a final question from Rohan, one of your countrymen out in Franschhoek.
Franschhoek, hoe gaan dit?
Answer live. Right, so, sorry, okay. Question from Rohan. Advice for going about establishing boundaries in a founder-led company as a head of product with a strong senior leadership team where it's normal for every person to wear many hats at any given time and roles and responsibilities. So any advice in that context?
Rohan, again, give us the context. What is your objective here? Are you in this company to try and learn to get to another company, to get experience? Are you here to try and stay with the company as long because you've got equity in it until you can exit and do that? You're part of the founding team, okay? Cool. Help us out more with the context here, dude. Okay, great. So you're in it for the long term. That's cool. Because some people are just like, look, I'm here for 18 months to get to the next level and then get another job, and you're not there. Okay, great. Establishing boundaries. Dude, learn to say no. Although we kind of assumed, I think Henry was joking that being South African, or I was earlier, that we'd find that easy. I don't think it's ever easy. But I do think you need to get the senior leadership team, and you need to understand, like, where does, for example, engineering end? Where does product start? And can you define, and please don't do this via a racy chart because they just drive me freaking mental. You know, these big corporate things of who's responsible, who's accountable, but who's this, who's that. It's just, okay, this is what product do. This is like where we end, and this is where engineering starts. And then what's going to happen as soon as you go through that exercise, people are going to start talking to you about the gray areas. And they're going to say, well, and that's exactly where the problems are going to come. The problems are not going to become, well, as engineers, you write code. Great, clear, right? Product people aren't going to be stepping on your toes there. Or as product managers, we set the roadmap. And then you may have a CTO that goes, well, to set the roadmap, we need to do this, that, and the other. So I'd say write that down. See where the gray overlap areas are, and spend all your time thrashing that out until you can decide it's this person, it's that person, or try and define, and we've done this before once, and it worked really well. If you can't decide that, because it's a really small company, who is your umpire, right? So if, like, Henry and I couldn't make a decision because we wanted to do a webinar at 5 or 5:30, if Henry and I can't come to a decision, who can we appeal to that's going to kind of be the, you know, just get a decision? I can go, hey, Henry, Henry wants this, I want that, I think this, but we need someone to come in and make a decision. And then once you've assigned that person and you trust in their wisdom, and maybe you're trying to find this fictional King Solomon type of person, whatever, but find them, they make a decision, own that, and go forward, and then adjust as it goes forward. It could be in 3 months' time, you come back and go, well, actually, you know what, we tried that way, it didn't work, let's try it the other way. But and I think it takes guts to put that kind of thing together. But you're very successful if you do it.
Nice. That's it. I mean, we're working at the moment, Ron and I, on some work around like their company strategy, and it's, yeah, I find this is obviously based on our different backgrounds, right? My tendency is always to focus on, let's nail the strategy and higher level roadmap, which we need, right? So we have that sort of common understanding of what we want to do as a company. But it is important to back that up. You know, we can have a great strategy, but we need to back that up with organizational clarity and harmony as best possible. So I think, as Ross said, it's, you know, let's do the work we're doing, get strategy defined, communicate that, align around things like a blue ocean and the discovery work we're doing. But then also, as Ross said, set a boundary in terms of who's well, what's your domain, what comes under your domain specifically.
Yeah, and last points on this. I'll get to you, Jeevan, in a second. And then, I mean, that's why Henry and I love consulting on this stuff, because sometimes the answer is, I'm not trying to pitch us in any way, shape, or form, but sometimes it is get an external group of people or person in to try and help you who's been through that. Okay, Jeevan, great. Really glad you thought it was great stuff so far. one or two things a PM can do to start behaving like a CPO signal. Okay, cool. Happy to answer. Henry, do you want to answer this, dude? Do you want to take
Yeah, sorry, I was just staring at the words, and you're not taking it. What would you say are the one or two key things that a PM can do to start behaving like a CPO, or signal to others that they'll be ready for a role maybe sooner than they should be, which even's in our current cohort. So, I mean, one of the reasons why, so we're pushing you to work very hard on the vision and strategy and the communication of these higher level things before we talk about execution. That for me is the best way that you're signaling that you're a leader. And that comes across really strongly in interviews. And it's why actually the case study we do after the end of the 8 weeks is a Trojan horse. Not sure, it's a secret weapon, because you come into interviews and you're demonstrating this very structured process. You're not just jumping in and talking about this feature you worked on and what the result is. You're understanding the context before that and able to communicate that really clearly. So I always think that's the most effective in terms of how you communicate yourself, but also ultimately to be an effective leader, you need to work on this strategic level. You need to be able to influence effectively. So that's why we get you to really shift away from just focusing on execution, obviously, but also not obsessing over questions of how do we manage our product team as a PM, but instead, how do we think about a product organization and the key elements that are involved there? So sort of laying the foundation to move into product leadership. But yeah, Ross, any thoughts? I'm sure Jeevan would prefer to hear from you rather than having heard from me twice a week for 8 weeks.
Is he all Henry'd out? Okay, so Jeevan, what I mentioned earlier, get feedback, start asking for feedback early. What that does is it shows people that you're not scared of learning and getting better. And it also shows that you're a leader. It's probably the most cost-effective thing from an amount of time. Not tired of Henry just yet. Me neither, and it's been quite a while. So who knows? Yeah. So get that feedback. Get like forms. We talk about that in some of our courses. Get a form out there. Just even if it's 3 questions. If you get a whole group of people, maybe not in a one-to-one meeting, but if you're presenting a roadmap, if you're presenting anything to a group of 3 or 4 people, send a form, ask them, let's say you are presenting on the Q3's roadmap. So, get comprehension, like what did you think of it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And it's almost not important what the answers are, although you should take those answers and act upon them to improve. What is important is that people know they're going into a meeting with Jeevan. Jeevan is going to then ask them about these things. So they're going to start coming there and start seeing you as a leader because they know you're going to be testing them on it. And it's not in an aggressive kind of way, but all of a sudden you'll see within 6, 12, 8 weeks, maybe more 16 weeks, they'll start viewing you as that leader anyway. And the other thing that is interesting is that we'll start giving you feedback. There's someone in your group, what's his, Tiago, and he's in your cohort. And I remember when Tiago started doing this right in the beginning when he was doing a different course, and he started getting the feedback, and then all of a sudden, like really people are looking at him in a different way. He was looking at himself in a different way as well. So I see that as kind of let's say the lowest common denominator of what you should do from a tactical level immediately. There's probably no, let's assume you're going to have a meeting with 3 or 4 people in the next week. Do it. Jean, if you're still on the call, I know you've joined a company pretty recently, right? Start getting that feedback, dude. Start entrenching yourself there as quickly as you can. And that will do that because they'll start remembering you. And the other thing is nobody else does it, okay? So you're going to stand out and not like a sore thumb. You're going to stand out. People are going to, wow, they're going to take notice. Hey, check this guy out. Check this girl out. Whoever you are, like, wow, they're going to take notice of you, and you'll start. Okay, back to you, Henry.
So I massively just back that up by what makes leaders stand out is people that put their hand up. And I remember this. Literally, when I started putting bid before it, I remember writing my journal like 1st of January. Been thinking about starting a business again, and just like, I need a co-founder. I need someone that does sales. Just writing like nobody's coming for you. If you want to start a business, you have to go and do it. And just having that realization that you're not going to know well, you can't know everything. You can't obviously know what's at the next level until you get there. So just putting your hand up. And I think, as Ross said, particularly in your case, you've done the 8 weeks of Product MBA, you've got that sort of foundation and understand the building blocks of how we construct product, starting to think like a CPO. And now it's just about improving on all of those things. Best way to do that, gather feedback, iterate, try again. And you'll quickly move in the right direction with it.
Any other questions while we're still here?
Save a couple for next week as well.
Yeah, we did get a thumbs up.
Yeah, deeper. Nice stories to it. Yeah, well, that's a good place to wrap up. If you're signed up, I will send through a recording. Will come out tomorrow, and I will send through a link so you can sign up to future sessions for this. Will be a weekly thing. Thank you everybody for joining. Thanks Marina, Juan, Jeevan, everybody else that posted questions, Annika, Ryan as well. Speak to you in a couple of weeks. David as well. Thank you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time as well. Have a good evening /day for Marina over in the US. And we'll see you all soon.